one of the best parts about this show is that I have the opportunity to introduce some new content creators that I have found on the internet. So I'm really excited that our special guest this week is our guest, Scott. Hi, Scott.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm really glad that you've joined us this evening. I know this is a little bit different from the content you've done before. So how are you feeling about it?
I feel great, actually. This seems fun already.
Yeah, good. So, so here on the show, we take lots of calls from all sorts of people. So a little bit of everything. I found you through YouTube. Suggestions, I guess, came up for me. I found your content. You're pretty new to YouTube, I would say, right? Like maybe
Yeah,
like a year.
about a year. Yeah, it's been. I think I uploaded my first video in like 2020, but it's not the content that I make now. I kind of have evolved into what I'm doing now.
Right. Yeah. So
I
if
was
anybody,
forced. I was forced into what I'm doing now.
well, let's get into
Just kidding.
that. For people who maybe don't know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Scott Baker, as you can tell, and I make videos on YouTube about Christianity, criticizing Christianity, of course. And that's because I decided one day that I was going to make videos on YouTube because I thought it would be way more fun to do that instead of what I did for a living. And I didn't realize the amount of work it takes to do this, and you need to have a goal. I didn't have a goal. And so then I decided to make a video about Girl Defined. And apparently Girl Defined had been consumed by atheist YouTube by the time I'd made a video for it. So that's what the video got recommended to. So
Right.
I learned a lot.
I was gonna ask you about that. So your content, like you've had a couple of different kind of things that you've covered on your channel so far. One of the things that I noticed that you have really good quality content or quality videos. Like the way that you film and shoot your content seems to be like a notch above a lot of the content creators that I've seen. So, what's your background in that?
Okay, so I went to school for graphic design. I dropped out of college. I didn't finish college, and then I screwed around for a while, and then decided that I was going to teach myself to code. So through me just basically doing what I'm doing right now with YouTube, just working my butt off on that stuff, I got myself into advertising. So working in advertising.
Oh, okay.
But also I did photography classes in high school. I did photography classes in college. I've always been into photography, design, and stuff like that. So I know how to use a camera. I wouldn't say that I'm good at that. I'm like great at that, but I do have an understanding of how a camera works to get it to look a certain way. So
I think that comes across in your videos too. Like you kind of include a couple of different like a little bit more of a creative aspect to your videos. You kind of have an essay kind of format, but then you include other kind of stuff, which just makes it kind of more interesting to watch, I find. So you've commented on a couple of different things, and you mentioned earlier that you kind of made a video about a very popular Christian content creator that a lot of people have taken a stab at, if you will, for criticism. You made a video about Girl Defined, and I think that kind of was like a turning moment for your channel. So what was that reaction like, and like how did that change your channel and maybe the direction of your channel?
So I decided I was like, I'm just going to do commentary about whatever. I don't care. I just want to do funny stuff. I was like, I want to do funny like reaction videos, I guess. And then it's like, well, I used to be a Christian. Maybe I'll just do one about Girl Defined. Maybe that'll do something. And that video sat and stagnant because I wasn't getting views. I didn't have an audience. I was just publishing stuff, hoping something would happen. And then for some reason, some girl who doesn't do like atheist content posted a video about Girl Defined. And for some reason, her video took off too. And then mine took off like a month later. But it didn't take off. It's sitting at like 13,000 right now. So it's not anything crazy. But for somebody who had, 80 subscribers at the time, to have all of a sudden,
big jump.
It was over a year ago. All of a sudden, I just see this video getting views, and I'm like, why is this getting views? It doesn't make any sense. And at that moment, I realized the YouTube algorithm is actually, there's no sense to it. No, because it doesn't matter no matter how many right things you do, it'll just do whatever it wants.
It kind of just does what it wants.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there is some strategy to it, but there's also sometimes it's just like, well, let's try this. Let's test this.
Yeah.
But So
speaking to you a little bit, I think you have a little bit, like you've spent quite a bit of time kind of studying the algorithm. That stuff is kind of beyond me too. I do know that it is a struggle for people making their way in YouTube, especially like kind of building your audience, and you never really know what's going to take off. And so for you, it was your girl defined response video. And I think that did kind of change a little bit of who your audience was. And like you mentioned that you were a former Christian. So you've been critical of other things too. Like you have made like a commentary videos about Christianity. I think that's where a lot of your more recent content has been. You've also talked like just about like the weird kind of things that go along with different algorithms, like on TikTok. And you've also commented on things going on in politics and like the polarization of a whole country. And one of my favorite videos that you did was recently about Christian nationalism. So can you tell us a little bit about like what was your experience with Christianity, or maybe with church culture or American Christianity?
Yeah, so I have a video on my channel about it that says it more, but explains it more. But I went to a church. My dad was not a Christian when I was growing up. My mom was not a Christian. She was raised Catholic. So I was raised secular until my dad, when I turned 15, my dad and my mom split up, and he decided he was going to start, he did somehow became a Christian through AA is basically what happened. And so me being, a kid, I was like, not sure. I didn't know anything about God or anything like that because I'd never been exposed to that before. So I just went with what my dad did, and he didn't force me to do it. I was never forced to go to church. He said, you can go if you want. He even, even when I left, he was never like upset about it. So I never had the experience that I see people comment on my channel have. So that kind of has encouraged me to just keep doing this, because my experience was so mild in contrast to some other people's experiences that I feel like I'm able to just like provide something that some people aren't, because I don't have PTSD from Christianity. I just think that it's a bad, I just think it's a bad system. But I think some people do have figured out how to manage Christianity to not be so, awful. So, which I'm learning now that I should probably not just throw it all out. It's kind of my new position, is I'm trying not to alienate every Christian, just the fundamentalists.
I agree with you on that. Like I am one of those people that kind of came out of a really wild version of Christianity and did have some trauma from it, and spoke really harshly about all Christianity. And like, don't get me wrong, I don't believe the claims of even like the most mild versions of it. But I do think that there's kind of like the spectrum of harm that happens. And I think that it is possible for people to kind of be within their religious groups and be not causing such a detrimental effect on their like larger community or maybe on themselves or whatever. I think there are less extreme versions of it, but it seems to be that the problem facing most of what's going on in politics and in our in our culture and social issues right now are the extreme versions of Christianity and other religions. But I would say Christianity affects you and I the most, being like from North America. You're in the States, you're American, I am Canadian, but we both have some of the same issues, although very, very different. So mostly you're kind of looking towards talking to the fundamentalist or the extremist kind of side of it. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah. So I want to, ideally, I don't know. I'm kind of in a conflicting place, because what I fear about creating content online and what I see a lot of people do who take extreme positions is it morphs their brain into something, right? You see people who may have otherwise just been normal and not care, but then they're driven by these clicks, and they're like, oh, well, every time I make fun of Girl Defined, I get, $200 or whatever it is, or I get 10,000 views every time I make fun of Girl Defined. And then at that point, what am I doing? Am I actually helping anybody with that? Or am I just causing just like toxic energy for no reason? And it's not like their fans are going to agree with me anyway. So I'm not changing anyone's mind. It almost at a point I feel like is serving its own need just to like create content and views. And I would rather do something much more meaningful than that and help people in a different way with my content. So
right. That was kind of my next question I was going to ask you about, like your no, it's good, you answered it. Okay. But maybe just like clarify just one more point, is that I think like you've kind of focused on that. What did you say? Kind of like rots your brain, kind of that like on any issue, that when you kind of fall so hard onto one side, I think the word that I would use is tribalism, or like that just extreme siding on one thing, and then you kind of end up in this, a lot of people say you end up in this echo chamber, or this kind of feedback loop of like doing the same thing over and over again, and it can kind of move you to not having these productive conversations with the other side, or even like not wanting to be friends with people who disagree with you. Would you say like that I know you probably have more stuff that you want to do with your channel, but is that kind of one of the underlying tones of like what you want to do with your future content?
Yes. So I am very much against tribalistic ideologies creating tribalism, which I think a lot of that is driven by social media, but also because it encourages people to create content, like I said, that's more contentious. If you take, like the Daily Wire or whatever, I bet you if you got any of those guys in a room out away from a camera and had a conversation with them, it may seem less extreme than what they present on television, or I'm sorry, on YouTube or wherever else they publish. And even so on the left, you have, like the Young Turks are another example of political commentators who sometimes take really extreme positions on camera, but what kind of conversation would they have with you in real life? You know what I mean? And so it doesn't matter though, because what they're putting out is what other people are consuming. And so I don't necessarily think that I'm not taking a position on any of that or anything. I'm just suggesting
you're kind of just taking notice of it, right? Like
exactly.
You're sitting back and you're looking at what's going on, and you're like making the video where you're maybe reminding everybody to like, hey, just like check in with reality every now and then. And like,
exactly.
Are you getting pulled so far into this one like genre of social media or like content creation that you're like losing touch with, what's really how people actually interact with each other or whatever? I think like I don't know if we mentioned it before this show or the last time that we spoke, but there's kind of like a few new people kind of coming up with the content creation that are creating more like kind of documentary style ways of conversing with people. So just presenting them an opportunity to like kind of chat. Is that something that you'd be like kind of would look into doing in the future?
Yeah. So what I want to do is instead of just like pulling like a video of Paula Morgan or a video of Bethany and Kristen of Girl Defined and just like ripping on them for 20 minutes so that I can get ad revenue, I would much rather spend money that I make to buy a plane ticket and fly to them and film a story about them as individuals and who they are, because I think sometimes we forget, like as ex-Christians, that we were once like them. A lot of us were once like these people that we hate so much that I think that showing them this showing people a different perspective, I guess, but not excusing their actions or their comments or anything like that, because I think that that's where I want to be careful where I toe the line, because I don't want anyone to be like, well, you're just not being hard enough on them, which I know could happen, but I don't want it to be like, I just want people to see that like these are everyone's a human being, and just like I don't want to just keep putting more of that negative stuff into the world. So if I can criticize their ideas in a way more productively, I'm fine with that. I just don't want to, I'm trying not to turn into, like I said, I think one time I said, I don't want to turn into like the atheist Ben Shapiro one day. You know what I mean?
I do. I think I know what you mean. Like there is so much of like the show that happens in social media world, anything that's like put through a screen rather than face to face. I mean, that's been tricky over the last couple of years because of the pandemic, and I think we're connecting as best as we can. But it's also like there's a really kind of toxic side that can happen to anybody, regardless of what community or whatever label you put on yourself. That kind of it sounds to me like you're taking like a very much like a humanistic kind of approach to it, like trying to always remember the people behind all of the comments and all the videos and all the content that's being created. Like, are these people, how are they in like their real life? And I think that's kind of similar, and partly why I wanted to have you on as a guest, because I think that's similar to kind of the approach that I think I would take like when I'm hosting the show. I've been accused too of being like too gentle on people or whatever too, because I want to treat people like they are humans while still addressing the ideas that I think that they put forth, especially when I think that they're really harmful. So like there's a very, there's a line that you have to kind of toe with that. And I think it's a good reminder having people like you who put out the criticism and the reminders to everybody to just check in every now and then and make sure you aren't turning into like a total dick online.
Yeah, because when
right?
when you're behind a keyboard, it doesn't matter. Like you can say like no one knows who you are. You can just say whatever you want. You know what I mean? And even me, like on camera, like I can say whatever I want. Now there are some people where I will take the gloves off. I think, people like Greg Locke and other extremists, I have no problem with doing that. But
right.
I think those type of people are way more far gone and more dangerous than your just moderate fundamentalist Christians, like, whatever the Christian YouTube is, basically.
I think that's a good example to bring up. Like there are people out there that's like, they don't like, is it really worth your time and effort even kind of giving that person any kind of like trying to empathize with them? Because clearly
exactly.
like when they're stepping over that line into like terrorism, I think that we've kind of that's kind of the line that I'm willing to draw, that like, no, I'm gonna maybe not worth or not take the time to get to know you as a human, because clearly, you don't want that from me. You're not looking for that either. So, but the everyday person, I think you're talking about, and even just the more the smaller but well-known content creators that are out there, like seeing them for like who they are underneath, and even sometimes wondering, do they actually hold that view? Like if you were to like meet them face to face at like a coffee shop,
they hold that view.
Do they hold that view? Or
I think they hold that view. I think they hold the view, but I think that they have a platform, so they say it instead of not saying it.
Yeah,
right?
Good point. Yeah.
But I think that a lot of it is exacerbated over time. So as these channels grow, they may actually build these views as time goes because of feeding into the system. Essentially, they have a need to feed into the system. So I think the only channel that doesn't really seem to do that just kind of has been stagnant and the same the whole time has been Paul and Morgan. They kind of don't talk about, not Paul and Morgan, I'm sorry, but Girl to Find. They kind of just keep the same biblical stuff all the time, and it's always the same. Yeah. But a lot of channels out there, a lot of Christian channels do like a lot of social commentary about just like the secular world from a Christian perspective, as if that even matters to anyone. It doesn't even matter to Christians. I don't understand why that's even such a thing, but
yeah, it is super weird because to me, when I think about it, because like I was a Christian just a few years ago. It was like 3 years ago that I deconverted. I don't remember how many times in my life that I was like looking up on like how should I as a Christian feel about this necessarily. Like maybe I would talk to my like I was in the women's Bible study or whatever. Like it would come up like as I would talk to somebody I actually knew and like kind of respected the way that they went about life. But like this whole thing online now, this Christian YouTube content, and just like how repetitive it is too. Like I mean I could say that about any group, but it is weird. I would just say the whole thing's weird, and it's getting weirder, and the longer people do it, the more weird it gets.
Yeah, so I think that's a big thing, is how does Justin Bieber or whoever else affect your Christianity, you know? You know what I mean?
Is that the title of your next video?
No. I don't know, but that would be an interesting video to do.
I think it would be great if you did take your camera into different types of churches and do some documentary style interviews with people.
Right now I'm trying to get a hold of a bunch of different. I reached out to one of my friends. I have a friend who's like a conservative Christian. Ironically, he's like pretty conservative, and he'd be the kind of person that I'd probably criticize on my channel, but I've known him from church and I still talk to him. For some reason we get along. And because it's interesting about him is he can compartmentalize it. You know what I mean? But either way, I was asking him to get me in touch with some evangelical people, some Orthodox Christians, because I think the Orthodox Christianity is not really explained very much out there. And I think that that's an interesting position to look at. And I kind of want to explore the various types of Christianity and get leaders from each like different churches and talk to them. But I don't know what that concept is yet. That's just
something you're kind of working
something I'm floating around. Yeah. Because I got to do something different than just, oh, look at this YouTuber doing this again. That's not fun. That's going to get old, you know?
Yeah, so. Exactly. I'm curious of anybody like watching right now, like what your opinion is on what we're talking about. Like, is there a problem kind of going on with the algorithm or that sort of thing? Like, do you think that that we're inching closer and closer to extremism, and like what is a way that we can like maybe safeguard ourselves from becoming more extremists? So we do have some lines open still. So if you want to call in, the number on the screen is right there. It's 512-991-9242, or you can visit tiny.cc, call TW. So I'm always interested to hear from the audience when we talk about stuff like this, because there's always a wide range of opinions. Because I mean, it's kind of a weird area. Like how are we to deal with people, right? And there's going to be different opinions on it. So I think that, and especially like in the atheist community too, I think that there's a lot of really strong opinions on how we should be talking to people. I mean, we have different shows on the Atheist Community of Austin. We have different shows that kind of cater to different types of conversations for that exact reason, because we always feel that there is a need for every type of voice, every different kind of hosts, and different kind of conversational styles. So I personally am of the belief that they are all valuable for different reasons, maybe. So, but I know other people think that there should just be one particular way to handle it. So I don't know. I think that's kind of part of the problem, though.
I mean, I guess my question is what's the motivation, right? To talk about the lack of a belief in a religion, right? What's the motivation for that? Is it to get people to understand the truth and or to like think differently? Because I don't think that getting people to think differently is to alienate them personally. We've seen that throughout, politics, and that's why I think we're so split, is because everyone has their strict, way of going about things.
Yeah, I think that my motivation has changed since I started doing this kind of activism work too. When I first was coming out of Christianity, my motivation was to really help pull other people who were currently being traumatized in the church, to encourage them to come, like, to reevaluate their beliefs and to get away from the harm. I was really concerned about that. It took me a while to understand, like someone like yourself, someone who maybe wouldn't identify with being traumatized by the church. So as I've even met more people who maybe have the same position as me, but have a different experience with it, and learned that there's different motivations for it. So I think my motivation now has moved more to, obviously, we do a show about epistemology. We want to understand like what people believe and how they're getting to that belief. What kind of process are they going through? Because right after my deconversion, the pandemic hit, and then this really, really clear example of maybe some poor critical thinking was happening right in front of me, and I saw the connections here. The same kind of poor thinking strategies were getting people to believe in other things too, like the different conspiracy theories. And I started to realize how important it was, maybe less about getting people away from harm, but just getting people to think clearly, to stay clear of these, conspiracy theories and bad takes on things, right? Like, so getting to the epistemology of that was kind of that underlying the connection that connected all the different things, whether somebody has this false belief in some sort of religious claim or a false belief in something to do with the healthcare system or the pandemic or something like that. There was this underlying connection with all of it. So I think that would be my motivation for why I do what I do.